Welcome to the deep dive. We're to unpack complex topics and, pull out those golden nuggets of knowledge just for you. Today, we're diving into the fascinating, sometimes really intricate world of entertainment law. If you're a creator, maybe a producer, or honestly just curious about how intellectual property gets protected in film, music, media.
Well, this deep dive is definitely for you. We've got a ton of insights from legal experts ready to go, helping you navigate this often tricky legal landscape and safeguard your creative work.
That's exactly right. In the entertainment world, things move so fast. Understanding your rights and your obligations, too, it's not just like good practice. It's really essential for protecting your projects and, honestly, for your own peace of mind. We'll be looking at copyright fundamentals, why releases are so crucial, navigating those tricky implied agreements, and, yeah, the vital role of good legal counsel and specialized insurance. Okay, great. Let's unpack all of that. Let's get into the specifics of how your brilliant ideas actually become protected assets. And maybe more importantly, why being proactive about this stuff can save you a lot of headaches and maybe serious money down the line. So we hear the word copyright all the time, but what does it actually protect? Like, can you copyright a brilliant idea, say for a new film, a detective story set on Mars, or maybe just a catchy song concept? Can you lock that down?
Yeah, that's a super common question. And what's really key here, a fundamental principle in copyright law is this. There's no copyright in ideas. But, and this is the important part there, is copyright in the specific expression of those ideas.
Okay, expression.
Think of it like this. The general idea of, say, a superhero. Not copyrightable. Anyone can make a superhero story. But Spider-Man, with his specific costume, his powers, that whole backstory, that specific expression, that is copyrightable.
Got it. So if let's say I'm a writer, Sarah. If Sarah writes down her Mars detective story, or maybe she films a short based on it or turns it into a song, then it becomes protected. That's the trigger.
Exactly. That's precisely it. If you can express your idea in some sort of tangible form, a work defined in the Copyright Act could be Canada's, the U.S., wherever, whether it's a literary work like a script, a cinematographic work, a film, or a musical work. That expression gets protection. And as the first owner, the author, you basically control it. You can do what you want with it, license it, sell it, whatever. This is super important when people collaborate, too. The focus has to be on that specific expression once the work is actually, made. That's where the real legal teeth are.
Okay, that makes sense. But then this raises another question. If the protection kind of kicks in automatically when you create the work, do you have to register your copyright, like with the official Copyright Office? Is that just paperwork? Or is there a real benefit?
Well, look, it's never a bad idea to register. It's not strictly required for the copyright to exist. Like you said, that happens when you fix the work. But registering, it puts a really clear time and date stamp on it. Public record lets the world know, hey, this is mine, created on this date.
Right, like proof.
Exactly. And it shows up if people do searches. Plus, and this is a big plus, in many places, like the U.S., you have to register before you can even file a lawsuit for infringement. And registration can open the door to stronger remedies if someone does infringe things like statutory damages, getting your attorney fees paid. So, yeah, not mandatory for the copyright itself, but definitely a powerful tool for enforcing your rights later on.
Okay, good to know. So protecting your own stuff is one thing. But what about using other people's creations? Let's pivot to something really common, especially in film and TV. Using photos you find online. Let's say Sarah, our filmmaker, finds this amazing old photo on some archive website for her film. People are clearly visible in it. Does she need to track down and get releases from those individuals, even if they're just kind of in the background?
Okay, so speaking as a, practical but definitely risk-averse entertainment lawyer, the standard advice is always obtain any and all possible releases from the get-go.
Any and all. Wow.
Yeah, ideally. Especially for individuals who are clearly featured, referenced, maybe on screen for more than just a fleeting second. You should absolutely focus on getting as many of those releases as possible. The goal is always to have everything totally buttoned up, all the necessary permissions signed off. That way, the legal risk, when you go to exploit your project, distribute it, show it, it's basically inherently zero, or as close as you can get.
That sounds like a lot of detective work for Sarah. Where does she even start if she finds a photo she wants? Does she have to, hire a PI to find everyone in the shot?
Hopefully not a PI. No, you typically start with the copyright owner of the photograph itself. That's probably the photographer or maybe the archive or agency that holds the rights.
Okay, the photo owner first.
Right. get a general release from them to use the image. And sometimes they might actually know who's in the photo. Maybe it's their family or models they hired. They might even be able to help you get those specific releases from the individuals.
Still sounds like a pretty big task, especially if Sarah's making an indie film on a tight budget. Is there specialized help for this? Or is it just producer legwork?
Oh, absolutely, there's help. For larger productions, definitely. They often hire clearance personnel. These are folks who specialize in exactly this. They have the resources, the know-how to track down individuals, copyright owners, other IP holders, and secure all those permissions. You know, the lawyers, like me, we advise on what's needed, what the risks are, but it's generally not the lawyer's job to actually make all those calls and chase down every single photo release.
Right. The clearance team handles the actual legwork. Makes sense. Okay, building on that, when Sarah eventually gets her film funded, everyone starts talking about E&O insurance, errors and omissions. Does that E&O policy cover everything? Like, what if she, say, breaches a contract she has with her writer? Is that covered?
That's a really important point. Generally, no. A standard E&O policy does not cover claims for straightforward breaches of contract. So if Sarah misses a payment deadline in her writer's contract or breaks some specific promise she made, that's usually outside the E&O coverage.
Okay, no breach of contract cover.
However, there's a really interesting kind of narrow exception. E&O insurance typically will cover claims related to implied-in-fact agreements.
Implied-in-fact agreements. Okay, that sounds potentially tricky, like something you could fall into without realizing. How does that even happen? Is it just based on someone pitching an idea to Sarah?
It's not quite that simple, but yeah, it is an area where creators need to be careful. It's definitely a potential trap. There are usually two key requirements to establish one of these implied contracts. First, the person sharing the idea of the picture must clearly express that they expect to be compensated, either right before they share it or right as they're sharing it.
They have to say, I expect to be paid for this.
Essentially, yes, or make it very clear. And second, the recipient, Sarah, the producer in this case, must know about that expectation of being paid and then voluntarily accept the idea anyway.
Okay. So if someone blurts out an idea at a party.
Right. But if someone comes to Sarah's office, says, I have a great idea for your movie, and I expect to be paid if you use it, and Sarah says, okay, tell me. Well, she might be creating an implied agreement right there if she then uses something substantially similar. To avoid this, smart producers have everyone sign an idea release submission form before they hear any pitches. That form usually makes it clear there's no obligation or compensation unless a separate written agreement is signed.
Got it. Submission forms are key. Now, moving beyond contracts, what about defamation? If Sarah's film, say, depicts real events or maybe uses characters inspired by real people, how careful does she need to be? Will that E&O process help protect against libel claims?
Yes, generally it should, depending on the specifics of the policy, of course. But E&O insurance should provide coverage, meaning defense costs, and potentially paying damages for claims related to defamation, which includes libel and slander.
Okay, so it covers defamation. But what is defamation, legally speaking?
Well, for a claim to stick, you generally need a few things. There has to be a defamatory statement.
It's like harmful.
Exactly. A statement that tends to lower a person's reputation in the eyes of the community. And that statement has to have been published, meaning communicated to at least one third party. It also has to clearly relate to a specific person. They have to be identifiable. And crucially, a reasonable person looking at it would have to think it's actually defamatory.
So it's about damaging someone's reputation. Is it just words? Or could Sarah accidentally defame someone with, like, a picture in her film? Or even a cartoon caricature?
Yeah. Good question. No, it's definitely not limited to just words. Defamation can absolutely be expressed through photography, drawings, cartoons, even gestures in some cases. The general rule of thumb is that you're primarily responsible for the defamatory statements you publish initially. If someone else picks up your statement and republishes it, usually the legal responsibility for that republication falls on them, the republisher. Though, you know, like with everything in law, there can be exceptions.
Right, always exceptions. Okay, let's talk music. It's so crucial for film. Sarah wants this iconic song for a key scene, but getting music rights seems like a total minefield. Who actually has to say yes? Who gives consent for music to be in a film? Is it just the singer?
Oh, this is definitely where a deep dive, as you call it, is critical. It's often way more complex than people assume. You absolutely need to make sure you get consent from everybody who has a right to give consent for that specific piece of music in your specific production.
Everybody.
Everybody who owns a piece of the rights pie. Don't ever assume the main artist, the singer, is the only one you need. So many songs, especially hits, have multiple collaborators. You've got co-writers, the record label, who usually owns the recording, the music publishers who control the composition, the song itself. And don't forget music producers. They often have a significant creative input and might own or control a share of the composition or the recording too. It really is like a web, and you need clearance from every strand that holds a rate you need.
Wow, okay. That sounds incredibly complicated. So what if Sarah needs to change the song slightly for her film, like maybe add an extra chorus for timing or change a specific lyric, or even translate it for an international version? Does that make it even harder?
Yes, that adds another layer. If you're actually changing the composition, the song itself, there are two big things to think about. One, you likely need permission from the original writer or their publisher to make those changes. They have moral rights and control over derivative works. And two, you absolutely need clear consent to use the new intellectual property that's created by those changes. The new verse, the translation, that's new creative work. Even just hiring a translator or using an online tool to translate lyrics. Technically, you need consent for that translation from whoever controls the original song rights. Now, sometimes making your own recording of the song a cover version can save money because you don't need to license the original expensive master recording from the label. But even then, you still need to license the underlying song, the composition, from the publisher, and you face all the same issues if you want to change the song itself. More hoops to jump through.
All right, okay. Cover versions don't solve everything. Now, let's say Sarah's just starting out, needs that E&O insurance to get her funding released, but the music isn't locked down yet. I've heard of something called a music exclusion on the policy. What is that? Is it a bad sign?
Not necessarily a bad sign, no. A music exclusion just means that, for the time being, your producer's E&O insurance policy does not cover claims related to the music used in the production. This is actually pretty common, and it's usually okay early on. Think about it. A funder might demand proof of E&O way before production even starts, months before Sarah has even picked her songs, let alone cleared them.
Okay, so it's temporary.
Exactly. It's a placeholder. Later, once the music is selected, and hopefully an entertainment lawyer has reviewed all the licenses and confirmed everything's properly cleared, that lawyer will then typically provide a clearance letter or report to the insurance company's lawyer. Based on that, the insurer will then agree to remove the music exclusion. From that point on, the music is covered by the policy. So yeah, it's fine to have it early on. You just definitely don't want that exclusion still sitting there when you're about to release the film.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay, all this complexity really highlights how vital lawyers are in this whole process. But you hear stories, right? Producers like Sarah often wait until the very last minute to bring in a lawyer. Sometimes only when they need that E&O signed off, maybe even after filming is done. Why do you think that happens? And what are the big risks of waiting so long?
You're absolutely right. It happens all the time. It's a frequent challenge we see. Producers often only loop in lawyers when they hit that E&O insurance hurdle, which, like you said, can be really late in the game. Sometimes post-production has started or even finished. Now, look, for some really simple, low-risk projects, maybe they get away with it. But very commonly, we see significant problems pop up at that late stage. Problems that, if they can't be fixed, will completely block them from getting the E&O. And no E&O usually means no distribution deal, no broadcaster buy-in, no festival screenings. The project stalls.
So what kind of big show-stopping problems are we talking about? What are those common gotcha moments that Sarah might face if she waits too long?
Probably the biggest and most frequent one we see is a gap in the chain of title.
Chain of title. That sounds important.
It's critical. Think of the chain of title as the complete, documented, unbroken history of ownership for every single creative element in the film. From the underlying book or script, through all the writing drafts, music rights, photo rights, everything. It proves the production company actually owns or controls all the necessary rights. Without a clean, clear chain of title, you simply cannot get financing, you can't get E&O, you can't get distribution, period. And it exposes the producer to massive legal liability if someone pops up later claiming ownership.
And these gaps,
Yeah.
how do they happen? Is it always about failing to get permission for, like, a book?
Sometimes, yes, but often it's more subtle. It could be an oversight where, say, creative contributions to the script from different writers weren't properly documented in contracts, who owns what draft. Or, and this happens surprisingly often, it's where the creator, who is also the producer, like our Sarah, never formally transferred their own personal rights in the script or concept to their production company.
Wait, she has to transfer rights from herself to her own company.
Yes. The company is a separate legal entity. If Sarah wrote the script as an individual, but Sarah's Film Productions, Inc. is making the movie, there needs to be a piece of paper showing Sarah assigned or licensed the script rights to the company. It seems like a technicality, but legally, it's a huge hole in the chain of title if it's missing. These kinds of issues are usually very easy to prevent if a lawyer is involved early during development, but they can be incredibly hard, sometimes impossible, to fix later.
Wow. So getting a lawyer involved right from the development stage, maybe even when it's just a script, it sounds less like an expense and more like an investment, something that actually saves money and stress later.
Absolutely. That's exactly how producers should think about it. I know there's this image of lawyers being really expensive, and that can be intimidating, but our experience time and again shows that understanding these key legal areas, engaging counsel early, it actually provides cost predictability. And it takes a huge amount of stress off the producer's shoulders, letting them focus on, actually making the film. It's all about proactive problem prevention, not last-minute panic.
Okay, one last piece of the puzzle then. What about specialized film insurance brokers? Are they just middlemen adding cost? Or do they bring something specific to the table that Sarah needs?
Oh, a specialized film insurance broker is absolutely crucial. They're not just middlemen at all. Unlike a general insurance agent who might primarily represent the insurance company, a broker legally represents you, the client, Sarah, in this case. Their job is to advocate for your best interests.
Oh, okay. They work for the filmmaker, not the insurer.
Exactly. They provide professional, independent advice on structuring the right policies. And it's vital, really vital, to work with a broker who truly understands the nuances and the specific language of film production policies. They're very different from standard business policies. They can properly explain what the coverage limits really mean, like that $1 million E&O limit, how much that might get eaten up by legal defense costs before any damages are even paid. A good broker explains that. Their expertise in navigating the unique insurance requirements of this industry is invaluable. They make sure you actually get the protection you think you're paying for.
Wow. Okay, that was a seriously comprehensive deep dive. Protecting creative work in entertainment. It's clearly complex. We went from the basics of copyright expression, not ideas, right? Through needing releases for almost everything, understanding those tricky implied contracts, and navigating that total maze of music rights. It's definitely clear the legal side is as vital as it is complicated.
Indeed it is. And we also touched on why getting that legal advice early, proactively, is so key. Preventing those chain of title nightmares, making sure projects can actually move forward smoothly, get funded, find an audience, all without taking on unnecessary risk. And yeah, like you heard, don't underestimate the value of a good specialized insurance broker who really gets the film business.
Wrapping this up, what does all this mean for you listening, whether you're a seasoned pro or maybe just starting out like our fictional Sarah?
I think it means that, especially today, with content creation moving so fast, being so dynamic, the responsibility for securing and managing your intellectual property, it really rests squarely with you, the creator, the producer. Ignorance of the law, unfortunately, doesn't excuse you from the consequences. But understanding these key areas we talked about, that can really empower you.
And maybe here's a final thought, something to chew on as we wrap up. It gets really interesting when you think about the future, right? With technology evolving so fast, things like AI generating scripts or music, NFTs changing ownership models, creative teams collaborating across borders, how might the very concepts we discussed today, like expression or even what ownership means, how might those continue to be challenged and maybe redefined in the legal world in the years ahead? What new protections or maybe what new legal pitfalls might creators like Sarah need to navigate next? Definitely something to ponder as you keep creating.